Welcome to the CDRB Show, the podcast where you get to know some of the coolest people around. I'm your host, Christian Rodriguez, and each week I sit down with a special guest to chat about their life, career, and all the things that make them awesome. We cover some serious topics that matter, but don't worry, we keep it real and laid back. You never know what kind of insights and surprises you'll get, but one thing's for sure, we're always having a good time. So kick back, relax, and join us for another episode of the CDRB Show. Hello everyone, I'm Christian Rodriguez, and this is the first episode of the CDRB Show where we will be conversating with special guests. And my special guest for this week is President Dunsworth. How are you, President?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for inviting me to join you today, and good luck with your new venture on a podcast. I feel honored that I'm your first guest, so thank you.
Thank you for accepting this, and I wanted to ask you, how do you want me to call you? Mr. President, President Dunsworth, Dunsy?
Oh my goodness, the Dunsy thing. Let's let that one go away. As you know, some of the older alums have been trying to get that one to stick.
Really?
And I'm like, come on, we can't. I'm fine with President Dunsworth. Quite honestly, you're graduating pretty soon, so I'm also comfortable with Rich.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that.
So first, the first thing that I wanted to know about you was about your background. So can you tell us a little bit about where were you born and how was your life like when you were a child?
Sure. I grew up in the plains of Colorado, and if you've never been there, think dry, think cattle, think wheat. It's, if we back up 100 years, it was part of the Dust Bowl. So that my family was always tied to agriculture in one way or another. One side of my family farmed and grew wheat, and the other side of my family raised a few cows and horses along the way. I went to a really small school. My graduating high school class, I think, had 34 people in it. And of that 34, if I remember correctly, something like 15 to 17 of us started kindergarten together. Okay. So it's that kind of community where generations and generations and generations live. Two of my siblings have moved back and live in that same small town.
Oh.
I had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. A lot of work, especially when your family's tied to agriculture. Everybody works if they can.
So you were helping in your house to works in the
exactly. I drove a combine, harvesting grains. From the time really that I could reach the pedals and see out the windshield, I was probably driving something, because we needed all hands on deck.
You told me you had a wonderful childhood, but was there any struggle or because, for example, in my country, for example, in Honduras, my dad, my mom had to work since they were little because there were struggles with economy in the family. Did you suffer any struggle with that or with other aspects?
Sure. Christine, those are the things that we don't talk about, right? I mean, I'm sitting here in front of you in a nice suit, and I don't worry about food, and I don't worry about paying my bills. That was not my childhood.
Yeah.
Right? That the idea of, hand-me-downs, the idea that that you receive support for school or free and reduced lunches or the kinds of economic challenges that my family went through, we don't talk about those things nowadays. But there were challenges, and one of the things I learned, I appreciated years later. My mother often worked on holidays.
Oh, okay.
Because she got paid time and a half.
Oh.
And it never sunk into me that the reason why she worked the holidays was that she got paid more if she wasn't home for those holidays. That when I think about some of the odd jobs that my dad did while we were farming, it was always to try to make a little extra money so that we could afford things. Now, I never wanted for food, never wanted for clothing. Maybe I didn't have the best, but that was okay because a whole lot of my friends didn't either. So it just felt normal.
It was in the same environment as other people surrounding you, right?
That's exactly right. And that those, that looking back, there are those that were my friends that definitely had more, those that definitely had less. But I think a lot of it because we'd known each other since we were little bitty kids.
Yeah.
We looked out for each other. We included each other and that I never felt less than because I grew up without a lot of money.
Okay, let's forward a little bit more. And can you tell us about your family right now? Because I know that at least I have heard one of your sons studied here, right?
Yes. So Holly and I have been here 10 years. And our oldest son, Nicholas, graduated from Ozarks last year. He received a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and a minor in Economics. And then he also received a Bachelor of Arts in English. And he's now at the University of Missouri St. Louis, where he's doing a master's degree in applied mathematics, specializing in data science. Okay. We have two other children that are 17, Matthew and Emma. They'll graduate from Clarksville High this spring, and they'll head off to college. But they've also been taking classes here on campus the last 4 semesters. So Emma will head to Illinois College up in Jacksonville, Illinois, where she's going to study nursing, and she's going to swim for them. And Matthew will head to Arkansas State in Jonesboro, where he will study exercise science pre-physical therapy, and will be running for them on their cross-country and track program.
Okay, that's interesting. So they have been taking classes here at Ozarks that will serve for credit hours in the university they will be?
That's exactly right. So, for example, this semester, they're in Ozarks classes from 8 to 10:15 each morning, and then they go to the high school.
Okay.
So the kinds of classes they've been taking here, they've gone all the way through calculus. So they've been working on math, they've been working on English, and then they've each taken a couple of fun classes. So, for example, they took Dr. Smith's beekeeping class.
Okay.
One of them took Dr. Smith's intro to brim and bass fishing. Emma is taking medical terminology, and I think Matthew's taking a political science class. So some of it's been for fun, but then also some of it's to meet the requirements, and they want to maybe not have to take so many classes their first year when they're full-time college students.
Yeah. Talking about high school education, I was wondering, how was your education at, for example, high school? Were you a good student at high school?
Was I a good student in high school? Let's say this. I had really good grades.
Okay.
But I didn't really learn how to study in high school, which then caused me a little bit of a shock when I went to college. So I had a good group of friends in high school, and we were definitely on the college track. So we were pushed English, math, chemistry, physics, all of that. I also test fairly well, which was a mistake, because I tested fairly well. I had good grades. I enrolled at Colorado State University as a freshman, majoring in chemistry, and I skipped several classes. My first semester, I did fairly well. I got a 3.0 and change, a little over a B plus A minus.
Yeah.
As you've probably heard, my second semester, my freshman year, I didn't do so well. I failed a class, and I got a D in a class.
Okay.
The second semester chemistry, and second semester calculus. Now, one of the things that I've thought about many times since then, and you may laugh at me when I say this, but I didn't think to ask for help.
Yeah.
I didn't really know my academic advisor, and I'm not excusing my behavior. I had some fault there, but we got to a point in math especially, it's like the lights got shut out.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what was going on, and I didn't think to say, hey, I need some help.
Yeah.
I've often wondered what it would have happened if I'd gone to a school like Ozarks. Maybe I would have been a chemistry major. But if I'd been a chemistry major, I probably wouldn't be here now. So I got a 3.0 my first semester. I got a 1.9 my second semester, and then changed majors, found a field I really liked. I ultimately graduated with a degree in political science, and loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had to relearn how to study.
Yeah.
I had to relearn how to read. Read for academic purposes and really try to digest information. I had to relearn how to study.
Okay, now that we know what you studied in college, I wanted to know, how did you end here at Ozarks working as the president?
Sure. Well, it's a little bit of a journey. So between that and ending up in Ozarks is nearly 25 years. Mm-hmm. So I got a degree in political science. I had hoped to go to China and do graduate work. I'd applied to the Peace Corps. I was looking at some different things. And, well, things didn't work out the way I'd hoped. And a friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to a job fair. Why don't you go with me? I went to the job fair, and I got one of my all-time favorite jobs. I managed an all-male residence hall of about 140 to 160 freshman men in Illinois, 900 miles from my home, but I loved it. I loved working with freshman men and realizing that I could be really effective in helping them find their passions, keeping them out of trouble, trying to keep them engaged. Mm-hmm. And at the end of my second year, I had a dean, Dean Joe. He was actually the vice president, but everybody called him Dean Joe, who said, hey, how about you go back to get a master's degree? How about you go get a master's degree at a school? It'd be kind of like going to Arkansas Tech, that I stayed working 40 miles down the road. I got a master's degree. I got promoted. And about every 2 years for the next decade, I got another job. Then I decided to leave higher ed, and I went to law school. Okay. And I thought I was going to go practice law. Got married. Nicholas came along. And just as I was finishing law school, I was invited back to that university to serve as a dean and then as a vice president. Okay. All right, now I'm going to try to land this. So over the next decade, I worked for one of the most amazing mentors I've ever had, a gentleman by the name of Doug Zemke. He was the president there. Mm-hmm. And about 5 years into being a vice president, he said, I think you should consider being a university president. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to. And he said, well, you've got some deficiencies. And he's like, the first one is you need international experience. Mm-hmm. And over the next 2 years, he sent me to India for 3 weeks. He sent me to China on a couple of different programs for 10 days and started really investing in me. Mm-hmm. And then said, hey, you should try to be a university president. He saw something on you, right? He did. That it's one of the themes of my life, whether it was my third grade teacher, Mrs. Chenoweth, who told me that I could do math, or you just keep going, and there are these people along the way that said, hey, you have some skills and abilities. You may be rough around the edges, or, hey, have you considered working in this space? A search firm called about the Ozarks job. And Christian, the first time they called, I said no. Holly and I had just bought an old home that we wanted to fix up. At that time, Nicholas is 9, and the twins were 7. We'd just moved into a new school district. Everything seemed to be really going well in that space. Yeah. And I'll never forget what the search consultant said. He said, Rich, Ozarks is a place where your home life, your work life, and your faith life won't have to be compartmentalized. You can be all of you there. And I applied. I interviewed in Little Rock in a hotel. My first interview was what they call an airport interview. They flew in, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, and I was one of the 3 finalists. I was invited here. It's almost 11 years ago, and I knew I wanted the job 4 hours into the interview when I was interviewing with about 18 students. And the student body president asked me to bless the meal, and I started to pray, and in my family we hold hands. So my wife reached out and grabbed my hand, and it was electric, instant, and we both felt it. And after that lunch, she broke to go see schools, and she says, I felt it too.
Wow.
I think we're supposed to be here.
Maybe Ozarks has some kind of magic, right?
Something, and you've been here, it does have some magic.
Yeah.
Whether that's, we have students this year from, I think I saw the last number, 30 different countries and 35 counties. 100 students come from right here in Johnson County.
Yeah.
And it's a cool place where I don't think people worry about what you have or what you bring to the table. They meet you where you are.
Yeah.
And they celebrate who you are and what you're trying to do, and I like being a part of that.
Yeah, I really think that maybe Ozarks has some type of magic, because it has happened to even myself when I was applying to the Walton Scholarship.
Yes.
I was like researching for all the universities that are part of the Walton program, and I saw photos of every university, but when I saw a specific image from the chapel here, I felt something.
Yeah.
Being in Honduras, this was when I was in Honduras, and I saw myself there in front of the chapel, and that was like 6 months before I got selected. Yeah,
that's wonderful.
So I feel that maybe it has some type of magic that we don't know, we don't understand.
Well, 2 of my favorite pictures every year, when the Walton Scholars in their different shirts, where the graduating class is wearing one color and everybody else on the steps of the chapel, followed by the pictures in the fall, when there are people everywhere taking pictures and just enjoying the change of seasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, whether it's magic, whether it's a God thing,
yeah,
whether it's faith, whether there's something going on here.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty interested on your job as president of the university, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, have you had to take, I guess yes, but have you had to take hard decisions here at Ozarks, and if yes, which was the hardest decision?
Oh, wow. The single hardest. Yes, there are difficult decisions that have to be made on a regular basis. So let's talk a little bit about governance. All right. So yes, I serve as the president. The university has a board of trustees. That's between 22 and 27 people, depending upon when. And that board is ultimately responsible for the institution. They have one employee, that's me, and then I'm responsible for building an administrative structure, encouraging and supporting faculty. And I think that the toughest decisions are usually around people. I can think of an appeal decision when a student was suspended from school, and feeling really gut-wrenching that I had to, the right thing to do was to uphold the suspension and tell somebody they had to leave. I think sometimes that also happens as we think about academic programs and going, okay, can we continue to do a program, or should we make changes to that program? The toughest decisions are always in terms of separating in the community, whether that's telling an employee they can no longer be here, telling a student they can no longer be here, and then it's thinking about what happens next. And those are also tough decisions, but they're different because we don't know what the future holds. In saying, okay, how should we change the curriculum to support future students? How should we move forward? Right? If we use the Walton Scholars Program as an example, telling somebody they have to go home, when in my heart I think it's best that they stay and go on to get a graduate degree. But knowing that the scholarship requires that the student to go back to the home region for at least 4 years. Those are they're emotional decisions that take a toll, but it's knowing we have value statements, knowing we have a mission, and that using those statements to help guide me allows me to go home and have dinner and usually sleep at night.
Yeah. Do you sleep well?
Most of the time.
How many hours do you normally sleep?
Okay. I need at least 8 hours.
Okay.
And I'm pretty good. We've talked about our kids a little. My children were swimmers, so they were accustomed to lights going out and the house kind of coming to a stop early evening, which makes it pretty easy to be in bed by 10.
Yeah.
Get a good 8 hours of sleep. It took me a while to get to that point. When I was your age, I didn't get enough sleep. You've also heard me preach sleep to students. Sleep deprivation can make you do weird things and can make classes a whole lot more difficult.
Yeah.
So hey, let's talk about sleep. Let's talk about what we eat.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we live.
Also, I wanted to ask you, now that I asked you first about your toughest decision, what is your biggest accomplishment while being president of the University of the Ozarks?
Wow, my biggest accomplishment. First response is that I'm not able to do very much by myself. Right? I mentioned that board. I mentioned the faculty that, and I know folks go, oh, well, it's a team effort. It is a team effort. So in light of that team effort, the accomplishment that I'm most proud of is the new science building. The science building needed investment, and we were worried about could we find the funding to really renovate and build what students deserve and what we need, and the fact that we were able to build that in the middle of a global pandemic, and that it was fully funded and will be endowed forever, so that when it needs upgrades, the funds will be there. I'm going to be proud of that for a very, very long time. Yeah. That's the single largest thing that I'm probably most proud of. Just second to that, and it's one of these odd things, is it happens every May and every December, and it's commencement. Yeah. The fact that I get to hand you a diploma, and that my bet is that as your name is announced and you start walking to me out on that stage, you're going to flash that smile. And it's going to be one of pride and a little bit of nervousness because your friends are going to start yelling, and I don't know if there's going to be family from Honduras, but the weight of getting a degree sinks in, and I get to watch it firsthand. For 150 students in May and another 25, 30 students every December. And it's the coolest thing because I know some of the stories, right? I just learned a little bit more of your story about your mom and dad and the challenges and the struggles. Yeah. And I get to experience that when I hand you a diploma.
That's great. Now that you mentioned about the science building, that's one of the biggest accomplishments that you can tell us about your tenure as president. Are there any coming new projects to the university, like renovations or new buildings renovations or programs, etc.?
Yes, that we have probably 3 priorities. One is Smith King Residence Hall. That I think it's fair to say they're a little tired. They're a little dated, and they need some work. So my hope is that will be next. We have design plans. We know what it will cost. Interest rates and things have gone a little bit berserk the last year, so we're trying to figure out how we might do that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, athletic facilities, specifically baseball, softball, and soccer. That's in the top 5. And one of the ones that's always there, Christian, is creating funds for additional endowed scholarships, ways to lighten your load and lighten the load of your colleagues, and making sure that college stays affordable.
That's great. Well, we're in a university here. We're students, and we do things, right? The next thing I want to talk to you is about issues that may arouse among students at the university. For example, one of them is, and first I want to ask you this question. I don't know if you will answer, but did you go to parties when you were in college?
Did I go to parties when I was in college? Yes.
Yes? And they were like, well, I have seen a lot of movies, and I have been myself in parties here, so I know how they are. Like, so I guess it's the same as your experience.
Well, it's been a long time since I've been to a student party. I may have seen some videos and some TikTok posts on, what do we call it, Ozarks hype. So I may have seen some things, and I would say my college parties weren't quite at that level, but some things are universal.
So
from one generation to the next, some things are universal.
So you receive all that information, every party, you know where they are?
Well, I haven't lately, but last year I was asked to judge a costume contest.
Okay.
And when somebody said, well, it's going to be at midnight, I'm like, I'm not showing up at your party at midnight, Odo. There is just no way I'm going to be there.
Oh, my God.
And he's like, come on, if you showed up, that would just be amazing. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think about half the students, it might scare them if I show up and I'm going to bed. And then I gave them a little bit of advice on how many people should be in a building, and let's not engage the police, and let's make sure that people are safe and getting home and all those kinds of things.
Have you heard any party lately around your house?
No, but you're laughing like maybe I should have.
No. I'm not laughing.
No,
I'm laughing, but not for that. I just want to make sure, because I know that there are student houses near your house. So,
well, I'll tell you one that there was it was over the holiday break.
Mm-hmm.
So the holiday break and so students are gone, and I'm hearing music, and I couldn't figure it out. And it's every now and then you hear it, then you wouldn't, then you'd hear it. Well, like a mile away, there's a quinceañera. And they brought, it's a huge band and sound system, and they were rocking. So, the last party I heard was not your kind of party. It was a quinceañera.
Yeah. So, we live in a dry county here.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a dry county, but I don't think it's too much of a dry county, right? But how hard is for the university, and I don't know how much you can tell us about this, but how hard is for the university to control what students do in terms of alcohol consumption, given that we live in a county where it's prohibited to have alcohol?
Well, all right, so you asked the question, and I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, but let's assume a lot, and let's just be really blunt.
Yeah.
Right? The nearest liquor store is 12 miles across the river in Scranton? So I appreciate we're a dry county, but I'm pretty confident that our students of age, if they want to access alcohol, they can access alcohol. So my first thing with my faculty and staff, primarily student affairs staff, is let's be honest with each other, all right? That it's not if, it's when and how. Right? So when we think about freshman residence halls versus upper class residence halls versus some of our houses, that if you and your friends are 21 or over, I would rather you have a beer, cook out in the backyard,
Yeah.
and be safe. Then go to, say, one of the schools in Northwest Arkansas where there is a range of bars, and then drive home.
Yeah.
Now, as it relates to underage, it's against the law.
Yeah. That's
Right.
right.
What is our role to enforce it off campus? Well, I'll leave that to the police. On campus, that's the purview of student affairs, the dean of students, and I expect that we enforce the rules, but that it be educational.
Yeah.
And that we help people understand what they can and can't do and what they should and shouldn't do.
So you said that you appreciate the fact that we are a dry county, right?
Yes.
And you don't, if there was the chance or in the coming elections they were like to get that topic, you will be against being not a dry county anymore?
I would not be against. I would be for us moving wet.
Okay.
All right? And part of it, all right, let's do this. The university with Aramark, we have an alcohol license. So we serve alcohol at wedding receptions. We serve alcohol at events. When you have a senior dinner with me, you will be able to have 2 drinks during dinner. When I do that, it's to prepare you for work.
Yeah.
It's to prepare you for the nature of what's out there, because you might have an interview someday and the person says, great, afterwards we're going to go have a beer. I want you to see that you can stand at a high top table, you can socialize over a beer or a glass of wine.
Yeah.
I don't serve liquor, and that's about consumption and being able to control things.
Yeah.
You having 2 glasses of wine or you having 2 beers over a 3-hour period of time at one of my events is role modeling that it doesn't have to be bad, and you don't have to drink. That's also, I think, one of the things that trips me up. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah.
So when we do prohibitions, it causes people to want to.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there a drinking age in Honduras?
Yeah, it's 21.
It's 21. Okay. So in some countries you have drinking ages. In some countries you don't. I would like it to be less hidden.
Yeah.
And that we have a conversation about it. For some students, it torpedoes their education, right? They come to college, they drink a little too much. They sleep in and don't go to classes. That's not what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'm interested in us going, hey, if I want to have a glass of wine at dinner, can I have a glass of wine?
Have
or
the
if
freedom.
Freedom. If you want to have a glass of wine, who am I to tell you you shouldn't?
Yeah.
It's not my job to tell you you shouldn't if you're over the age of 21.
Yeah, I think in the end it's all about education, because we're surrounded. Alcohol is a drug, the same as caffeine, and we have campus perks here. For example, we drink coffee, and even other substances or drugs are being legalized, like marijuana, for example, in a lot of states here in the United States. So I think it's not more about prohibition, but about telling people you have the freedom, but to tell them, like, to have them in measure if they will consume those type of substances, right?
Exactly. Right. Let's think about, can we picture a world where caffeine didn't exist and you introduced it today?
Yeah.
Would it be legal? Sugar, right? We consume so much sugar.
Yeah.
Huh. Caffeine's a stimulant. Caffeine it's like you just said, you can buy it on every street corner.
Yeah.
I wonder if it were just discovered today.
What will happen?
Would it get, what kind of scrutiny would it get?
I will say that people will criticize it maybe a little bit more.
Maybe a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
They go, no, it's bad. Well, especially think about youth. Should a 12-year-old be chugging one of those energy drinks?
Yeah.
Right? Should an 18-year-old chug a 6-pack of those energy drinks? I think we'd talk about things differently.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially with the case of energy drinks, in Honduras there have been a lot of cases in which people underage have died of heart attacks because of drinking those type of drinks.
They drink them, they get dehydrated.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a couple of those where it's been tied to gaming, where
Mm-hmm.
they're just pounding energy drinks and not realizing their body is in crisis.
Yeah. I will die if I take one of those.
Well, I've
Because even with a cup of coffee, I'm kind of anxious after that. So
I'm good with a cup of coffee every morning.
yeah, it's, I don't know. Maybe I'm not that really like resistant to coffee.
Oh, yeah. Well, please know I wasn't drinking coffee at your age. That happened
Yeah.
years later.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep talking, and now we're going to move to international students. And then we have. I'm a Walton myself, so I have to dedicate a section for the Waltons too. But
Great.
first, I wanted to talk about the international students, and I did a small research to find this fact that says, according to the U.S. News, which is a report made every year, 29% of the student body at the University of the Ozarks are international students. So I think we can't deny the impact that international students have
Correct.
here, right? What impact do you think that it will have if we didn't have any international students?
Wow. The university would shrink
Mm-hmm.
drastically, which would result in our need to either find other students to fill that void, or it would cause us to shrink services.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have fewer faculty, fewer athletic programs, just fewer of everything.
Yeah.
You know, we set out to grow international students 9 years ago. At that time, we had 64 international students, 60 of whom were Waltons,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And what we set out was that we posed the question or a hypothesis: could we increase 60 to 180 from 20 countries? And we set the 20 country mark because we didn't want one country
Mm-hmm.
to just simply, hey, let's bring in 300 students from India, China,
Yeah.
South Korea. Well, as you know, we were able to do it. And we went from 60 to 200, and then 200 to, I think the last I see, anywhere from 260 to 280 international students. And this year, it's actually 30 different countries.
Wow.
But we did it a little bit different in that the vast majority of our international students can be home within 4 hours of Houston or Miami, right? They're from the equator north.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a few from Europe each year, primarily Spain and France. Yes, we have a few from Africa. We've started to gradually grow that number. But for the most part, our students are from the Americas.
Yeah.
And we built that on the 40-year relationship with Central America and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
We knew we could, right? That now we have Central Americans, and I kind of laugh when folks will assume somebody's a Walton Scholar, and I'm like, hey, just because they're from El Salvador does not mean they're a Walton Scholar.
Yeah.
Just because they're from Panama doesn't mean they're a Walton Scholar. Those are the two countries we've been able to recruit the most non-Waltons.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll see that grow, and that we're good at it.
Yeah.
And I think we do a nice job. One of the other things you said, well, what would happen if they weren't here? The largest employers in Arkansas, Walmart,
Mm-hmm.
Stevens Financial, J.B. Hunt, Tyson, the kinds of employers that are in Clarksville, in the River Valley, in Arkansas, they're global.
Yeah.
They want a diverse workforce. So let's say I have a student from Clarksville who you've done a project with, and Diego, the young man that was here before, taking a picture, he's in that project, and then maybe Cal from Botswana, and all of a sudden a student from Arkansas is saying, oh, I've done a project with somebody from Honduras, from Botswana. I know what that feels like, and they were able to do it without leaving. So it prepares you. It prepares students, and I love seeing the intergenerational, that when friends are talking about, ooh, I visited my friend in Honduras when I was here. Cool.
Yeah. is the international program always evolving? Like, do you have any new plans or changes to the program?
I think the idea of always evolving, yes, but I'll answer it just slightly differently. The university has to always evolve.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as stasis. If you try to stop and be static, you're losing ground.
Yeah.
I think with our international program now, where it needs to evolve, some of that is here in Clarksville. Internships, externships, the kinds of things that you can do while you're here. Do we want to add more international students? Maybe, but we have to know why.
Yeah.
We're working on a new program with a school in France, and my hope that it's successful at the undergraduate level, so that our students can go to France for graduate school.
Okay.
So I think we're always looking for new opportunities,
Yeah.
but it has to meet our mission and our needs.
It has to be with a purpose in mind, right? Not
With a purpose in mind.
just because you
To
want
make
more
money.
Yeah, just to have more international students. Okay.
Right. More is not always better.
Yeah, that's true. So we're gonna keep talking about international students, but I think that we are in another section of international students, the Walton Scholars.
Okay.
So are you part of the board of trustees? Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yes. So you're involved directly on decisions that may affect to the Walton Scholars too, right?
Well, let's yes and no. And here's why: because of conflicts of interest.
Okay.
So when votes and decisions are being made at that level, I recuse myself. Now, I'm not afraid to share my opinion, but it would be inappropriate for me to vote on that because it affects us.
So you refrain yourself from voting, or do they not let you vote?
I refrain from voting.
Okay.
That I'm still in the room.
So you can vote if you want it.
I don't think they would. I mean, I think all of us would say that's a conflict, and that I'm part of the conversation. I help write and edit the reports that we send. I am not shy at offering my thoughts on, you use the word evolution.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point where the Walton Scholars Program probably should continue to evolve. What does that look like? I don't know, but I think we have really smart people. One of them is the current director for Ozarks, Nicole England.
Yeah.
And I know she's got some thoughts and ideas, and I'm excited to see what might happen over the years as she is able to put her mark on it. And part of the tension there is because it is three campuses. It's 3 programs, but they're in association with each other. And each has a slightly different flavor. I just want to make sure that our flavor is us.
Yeah.
And not one of those other schools.
You mentioned something interesting that was there may be a conflict of interest between you or what you think and what the Board of Trustees want to make with the Walton Scholarship, right? So that means that maybe sometimes you're not agree with, or you want to make a change that maybe the Walton Scholarship will not accept?
I think that's a fair statement. Let's do this one. That one of the pieces that I encouraged and was really happy was the change in definition of, after you complete your scholarship, that you have to return to the region, which includes all of Central America and Mexico, where historically was you had to go to Honduras.
Okay.
So now if you get an offer in Mexico City, that counts.
You can go.
If you spend a couple years in Honduras and then find yourself in Costa Rica, that's great. What I wish is that it weren't so set, right? Because and part of it is because each of those countries are different.
Yeah.
That in some of those countries, graduate school is abundant.
Mm-hmm.
In some of the countries, it's maybe a little more challenging. So what if I want to get a graduate degree, and what if that makes the most sense for me? Are there ways to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think what trips us up more often is when Waltons marry Americans or marry U.S. citizens,
Yeah.
and then immigrate, and it's that tension of the scholarship was designed
Mm-hmm.
to influence Central America. The scholarship is designed because it's the power of education, right?
Yeah.
That when Mr. and Mrs. Walton created the scholarship, they believed that with education, our alums would go home and transform
Mm-hmm.
and grow and evolve and influence free markets.
Yeah.
That they would influence capitalism. That they would influence the politics of countries.
Mm-hmm.
That was the hope.
That was the mission back
Yeah.
in 85 when
Yeah.
the scholarship started, right? Something I am pretty interested in touching base on this topic is about the transcript issue that
Okay.
we have been noticing that this has been enforcing more and more since like 2 years ago, 1 year and a half ago.
Since Miss England took
Yeah.
over. Yeah, we can
So-
use names.
Yeah.
Since Nicole was hired, we
Mm-hmm.
we have been in enforcing the rules, and I think that prior to Mrs. England, we had gotten Ozarks had gotten way too lax
Mm-hmm.
in those rules and those expectations, and it put us at risk of losing the Walton Scholarship Program.
So way before the Walton Scholars that were graduated from here were given everything like the transcripts or the possibility to keep studying here if they wanted.
Well, I won't go quite that far.
Okay.
That probably the year before you arrived, a couple of years before you arrived, I think well-intended people
Mm-hmm.
were making individual decisions. So let's say you said, hey, I've got a full fellowship to the University of Arkansas.
Yeah.
I can go get a PhD and then I'll go home. And they would go, oh, great, you should do that. And then the next person would come in and say, hey, I've got a full fellowship to go to Penn State. And they would go, hey, you should do that. And then by the time they're done, 8 out of 10 Waltons are still in the United States. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work. That's not what the program's for. I think the other problem, too, is that people would say, hey, I need to get a PhD or I need to get a master's degree, and then I'll go home.
Mm-hmm.
And then too many people got master's and PhDs and then never went home. They're now faculty somewhere, or they're working for a U.S. company and they're here. Well, then, in many ways, and this is going to sound really a little cold, but in that context, the foundation basically wasted $200,000
Mm-hmm.
because they've spent the funds to educate, to prepare everything for the benefit of Honduras,
Yeah.
and instead the benefit is Chicago, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
or the benefit is Little Rock, Arkansas. That's not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is to influence and help Tegucigalpa or somewhere in Central America.
Don't you think that the rules or maybe the mission of the Walton Scholarship is getting obsolete in some ways?
Is it getting obsolete in some way? I don't know that I would buy that premise, and here's why I would say that.
Mm-hmm. Because, for example, retaining the transcripts, for example,
Right.
because of that, of returning to our home country, one of my opinions or maybe perspectives is that we live in a wording, maybe in the 85 when the scholarship was created, we didn't have internet or computers or telephones or whatever. And now we can work basically from any part of the world, and we can help our countries in several ways. Like, for example, in my case, I studied communications, and I actually don't study the strategic communication track. I study that. I don't study media production, but one of my career goals, is to be like kind of a journalist back home. And I don't think I need to be in Honduras to do that, for example. And I'm not saying that I will not be back in Honduras, right? But I'm saying that first, I'm safer out of Honduras if I want to do that job, because that job is very risky back home. And also, I also feel that you can do that and help your country to like discover the truth about the corruption or whatever that your country is going through. So I think that maybe it depends on case by case basis, that you need to be in your country or you don't need to be in your country to help improve your like the society and everything. And that's the goal of the scholarship.
And I think you're exactly right. That in an ideal world, it would be case by case.
Yeah.
Right. And when there was some flexibility for case by case, I think some people abused it. And then because of that abuse, we've pulled it back.
Yeah.
And then now it's ripe for the conversation of going, okay, how do we continue? And I think the challenge there too is each country's a little different, right? Yeah. I mean, let's use Panama for example. When the program was in existence, the United States controlled the canal, right? The United States no longer controls the canal. Panama has a much more robust economy than, say, Honduras or Nicaragua or Belize. And it's that, how do we think about that a couple of the countries have outpaced the economic development, growth, and quite honestly, Christian, and they're stable, right? We know that Honduras and Nicaragua, I'll watch my words carefully, but from a political, social, economic structure, they're very different than, again, say, Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And it's I think sometimes we put all the countries together and paint them with the same brush, and they're different. And maybe we could get to a point of thinking, well, what does it look like, right? What is the next evolution? We're not there yet, but I believe those are the kinds of conversations that Nicole can help lead. Any
upcoming change that you know about the Walton Scholarship or the scholars that are here actually?
I don't know of any changes. We do have a special trip coming up this summer.
Yeah.
Harding University has a new president.
Okay.
And just as when I was a new president 10 years ago, I was a new president and Harding had a new president 10 years ago. Dr. Pollard, the president of John Brown University, hosted us in Costa Rica and Guatemala to help us understand the Scholars Program. So this summer, Dr. Pollard and I are taking the Harding president, and we're going to introduce him to the Scholars Program in Panama, in El Salvador, and in Honduras, as a way to help him understand the value and the importance. I think one of the other huge changes is one of the inaugural directors, the director at Harding, has retired. So now all of the programs in the last 3 years have changed over directors. Nicole is now the senior director of all three.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to help influence things in saying, okay, what do we do next?
So like taking a leadership role.
Yes,
by
sir.
Being the director that has had the most experience.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So talking about changes, I'm as a Walton Scholar, maybe I think that there will need to be some changes made? Like, for example, do you think that and this maybe is just a random topic for the scholars, but it has been a central topic when there are discussions on things that should be changed or revised, and that's the allowance. The allowance right now is $125, and I don't know when was the last time it was revised, but I can tell you from personal experience that, for example, for this big break that comes next week, sometimes the money doesn't last as it lasted, for example, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So do you think that is probably one of the changes that should be revised?
Well, yes, and in many ways that is, I wouldn't argue, or I wouldn't posit that that's necessarily a change. So let me explain how this works. That every 3 years, the schools come together and request funding for the next 3 years.
Okay.
So the last time that the allowance was changed, I want to say it was 7, maybe 8 years ago. And what has happened over the last 2 years, inflation, prices, things have changed so drastically. I think that's going to be one of the things that's, I won't say it's automatic, but I would bet that as Nicole is laying out the next request, that she's asking for an adjustment to that allowance. And I've already heard her talking about, okay, how do we calculate it? What's a reasonable allowance? And $125 a month is, and part of the conversation is, what is it for? What's it supposed to fund? I think it's especially challenging for months like March, where you have a week where the cafeteria is closed.
Or in December as well.
Exactly. And that maybe the allowance itself doesn't change, but in those, like for fall break, for Christmas break, for spring break, Thanksgiving holiday, that maybe there's a holiday allowance, so that when the cafeteria is closed, you get a per diem for food. That's just assuming there's going to be a real cost there. And those are the kinds of conversations that I think are ripe and that we should be having.
Yeah, I really hope that changes like that. I mean, I'm leaving, but I would like for
I'm graduating.
Yeah, I'm graduating, yeah. But after I graduate, I would like that the scholarship keeps improving and that changes are made to help students that are here with the scholarship, because that, for example, is a topic that has been on the table since like more than 2 years. The seniors that graduated last year or seniors from 2020 even were talking about topics like that, so probably in the future. We're getting to the end of the conversation already, so for this last part I wanted to kind of dynamic and it's one word answers of different questions. Okay, they will be fast and,
one word. Do hyphens count?
Yeah.
Okay, I can hyphenate a word. All right.
So the first one is, what is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I say good morning.
Okay. Religion?
Yes.
Yes.
Christian.
Okay. Morning person or afternoon person?
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Okay. Favorite music genre?
Country.
A job you dreamed to have when you were a child?
I dreamed of being a doctor.
TV shows or movies?
TV shows.
What's the last TV show you watched?
A Million Little Things.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
And finally, I give you the opportunity to ask me whatever you want to ask to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Please be easy on me.
Please be easy on you. Yeah, because you've got all the notes and all the preparation. So,
yeah.
Well, let's do some of the big one. Why are you doing this? What caused you to want to do a podcast?
Well, since 2020, I started like doing podcasts, but like nothing serious, and it was everything Spanish. So this is like the first project for a podcast in English that I do, and one of my purposes is first to get to know more the people from Ozarks or from the community and know more about their lives or their occupations, but also this will be very useful for me personally because I think that all this may serve as a professional experience as well. So I think that's my main goal with the podcast, and I like doing this. And since I started the radio program last year at the university station, I think I got even more motivated from that. So
Great.
That's, yeah.
Now, do you ever watch or listen to Lilo Viejo?
Yeah, I have seen his
Ivan?
videos, yeah.
All right. That when he was on campus, he was one where I didn't know he was such a big deal. So when people ask me to be on podcasts or these kinds of things, I never know what the reach might be.
Yeah.
So when I heard he had, millions of viewers, I'm going, oh, that makes me a little nervous that a student of mine has millions of viewers.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the plan after you mentioned journalists? You want to be a professional journalist? What do you do you think?
I'm not sure yet because as I told you before, my track in communications is not really media production. I'm not media production. My track is strategic communication, but I actually took that track instead of media production because I thought it was going to be more like useful in the sense of finding more job positions in Honduras, back in Honduras. But really my passion is all about media, and I would like to work in a TV station or a radio.
What are your minors?
Political science and American studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you should be well equipped to work on a radio or television and help put things in context.
Yeah, I studied political science as a minor because I wanted to have some kind of political background, because in my mind I also thought about getting involved politically in Honduras, but I don't think about that anymore, maybe because I appreciate my life. So
you said it, I didn't.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm not pessimist, but I think it's very difficult for my country to get out of the corruption and all the social issues that it has. It's very difficult, so I kind of gave up on that, and as I told you, I appreciate my life. So
well, I'm glad you appreciate your life.
Yeah. So
well, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing how you produce it.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing who else you interview.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone that listened to this first episode of the CDRB Show. You can find us on Instagram as CDRB Productions. Please follow us. I'm Christian Rodriguez, and I hope you can be with us next time. Goodbye.